Buenas tardes a todos, bienvenidos. Para una mejor experiencia, les solicitamos por favor que mantengan sus micrófonos muteados. Todo el material que presentaremos puede ser utilizado para difusión y promoción. Muchas gracias y que disfruten del evento.
Recording in progress.
Muy buenas tardes a todos y cada uno de ustedes. Estamos felices aquí en History Channel de poder darles la bienvenida a este gran evento, un evento de otro mundo y de otra escala, porque estamos presentando la temporada 16 de Alienígenas Ancestrales con el único y fantástico Giorgio. Un video, por favor, para recordar de qué se trata la temporada 16.
Existe un portal en el universo, más allá del cual yace la promesa de la verdad. Nos exige cuestionarnos todo lo que nos han enseñado. La evidencia nos rodea. El futuro está justo frente a nuestros ojos. No estamos solos. Nunca lo hemos estado.
Alienígenas ancestrales. Por History Channel.
A partir del 17 de febrero y hasta exactamente el 21 de abril podremos disfrutar de 10, sí, efectivamente, 10 episodios de Alienígenas Ancestrales con Giorgio, en donde vamos a poder ver
Tienen
temas
problemas
tan
para la conexión con Giorgio.
diferentes y difíciles como la ciudad perdida de los mayas, los whistleblowers, Jacques Vallée, el pionero de lo que es considerado hoy día el multiverso, a ver si Elon Musk también nos está escuchando, la búsqueda de la inteligencia no artificial, sino la búsqueda de la inteligencia alienígena, la tumba de los Cosmic Bulls, los profesores ancestrales, de Linda Moulton, Howard's Files, sí, los archivos de Linda Moulton, la resurrección de Puma Punku, que es uno de los episodios más importantes para Giorgio y del cual nos va a hablar en breve, y obviamente The Chosen, los elegidos. Así que estamos esperando que Giorgio se una nuevamente con nosotros y empezamos este evento increíble con Alienígenas Ancestrales y Giorgio, solamente por History. Recuerden que tenemos todos los episodios disponibles inmediatamente, sí, escúcheme bien, inmediatamente después de que salga al aire a nivel lineal, tenemos los episodios en VOD, sí, en Video On Demand, con su cable operador podrán ver todos esos episodios cuando quieran, como quieran y donde quieran, para que puedan disfrutar de esta temporada increíble, la temporada 16 de Alienígenas Ancestrales.
En las selvas de América Central, el pueblo maya prosperó durante más de 2000 años.
Los mayas eran muy sofisticados. Construyeron grandes ciudades piramidales.
Crearon el único sistema de escritura que conocemos en toda América.
Los mayas poseían conocimientos que desafían cualquier explicación.
¿Cómo comprendían las largas y vastas órbitas de la Tierra a través de la Vía Láctea?
Nuevas pruebas revelan una civilización más extraordinaria y más antigua de lo que jamás imaginamos.
Hemos descubierto un capítulo perdido en la historia de la humanidad.
Pero el mayor secreto de los mayas implica el contacto con visitantes de otros planetas.
Los propios mayas decían que habían recibido enseñanzas de seres extraterrestres.
Alienígenas ancestrales. Por History Channel.
There we go. All right.
How are you, my friend? We are talking now about season 16. Season 16 starts with the lost city of the Maya. I just shared a video with the audience, but we want to know from you why this episode is so important and so relevant, not only for the history of the Maya culture, but also for everyone and everything have to do with ancient culture.
It is important because fairly recently thought that everything about the Maya was known and that they existed during a certain period of time. However, in the last 5 years, through satellite radar technology, it has been determined now that the Maya goes back thousands of years before what was currently accepted. The entire Mayan basin has an a road network with elevated roads that was only recently discovered, and then all these structures that are currently still underneath the jungles of that region. There's so much there indicating that the entire culture goes back hundreds, thousands of years earlier than what we're being taught. And in one episode too, in one of the previous seasons, we also talked about Caral in Peru, where Caral is also going much further back in time than what the accepted mainstream says. And by the way, these discoveries are accepted by the mainstream now. So these new discoveries about these more ancient structures in Guatemala and all that area is something that the archaeologists have come forward and said, hey, wait a second, this is much older than what we thought. And this is something that we've always said, that these cultures go back much further in time than what we're being told. So I think these are the most exciting of times, because with this technology, we get to see the evidence that is brought forth in real time over things that only 20 years ago were speculation.
Correct. And one of the things that people ask the most, and every time that we have these press working sessions, everybody's asking you always for, give me a proof of the alien intervention. Give me a proof of alien existence. And one of your favorite topics, if I remember correctly, is Puma Punku in Bolivia. So please tell me, how do you believe that Puma Punku in Bolivia is one of the many evidences of alien existence?
I'm glad you bring up Puma Punku, because it is my most favorite topic and my most favorite place on Earth. Puma Punku is situated at an altitude of almost 13,000 feet in the highlands of Bolivia in the Andes, right on the border between Peru and Bolivia. It is right next to a site called Tiwanaku, and it is one of the most amazing World Heritage sites in the world. Right next to it is this place, Puma Punku. Now, why is it important? Well, because at Puma Punku, we have stone blocks that are, on average, 75 metric tons, and they're made of andesite. And we are made to believe that with the andesite, that andesite was cut with the tools that were found there. And the tools that were found there consist of copper and bronze and some iron tools. Now, it is a physical impossibility to cut andesite, which is igneous rock and basalt, with copper and iron and with bronze. It's a physical impossibility. So my question is, how was that done by an alleged Stone Age people? And the answer to that is that the Stone Age people tell us exactly how it was done. They tell us that Puma Punku was built in one night by the gods. Who were these gods? Misinterpreted extraterrestrials, because and I've said this to you guys before, but everybody should hear this. There are no gods. There never were any gods. There never will be any gods. The reason why we have these stories of gods is because our ancestors misinterpreted highly advanced technological extraterrestrial beings as gods, even though they were not at all, because of their highly advanced technology.
One of the things that we discuss every day in every room, from the bedroom to the boardroom, is artificial intelligence. But one of the episodes speaks about alien intelligence. How close are we to find evidence of our alien intelligence among us?
I think it's already here. I think that we are right now in the middle of disclosure, because all the events that are going on all around us are very bizarre. In fact, we have this drone mystery of these drones flying all over the place. We have the orb mystery with these orbs of lights showing up everywhere. And traveling at high accelerations and doing maneuvers that, our technology, as far as I know, could not do. They would incinerate, or they would, crash, or turn into mush, going in at that acceleration. Our current material sciences would not be able to do this, as far as of what we know that has been released publicly. And so the idea that, for example, AI has been, begun or is somehow connected to an extraterrestrial force or something is a possibility, because this AI thing, it just popped up out of nowhere, and it has accelerated so incredibly quickly. You have to wonder what is currently happening. And by the way,
now
what I wanted to mention too is, in this season, we have a special Puma Punku episode called Resurrecting Puma Punku, in which we have 3 forensic 3D recreation artists, and they have recreated Puma Punku, and you have to go see the results. It's unbelievable.
We cannot wait for that particular episode. Now, we have the questions from our journalists. The first question will be, we have a legacy of all these amazing advances from the Mayan culture. If you have to choose one evidence of the alien relationship with the Mayas and the evidence of the ancient astronauts from the Maya culture, how you will describe, or why you will choose to use it as a proof?
So one of the pieces I would go directly is the so-called Chilam Balam book, which is the book of the so-called Jaguar priests, in which they described the arrival of the so-called sons of the sky, in which they described that the road of the stars descended to the earth, and the 13 sons of the 13 gods descended from the road of the stars down to earth. And this all happened on the 11th of August, 3114 BC. Now, we all have to agree that most likely the Maya culture did not exist in 3114 BC. So the question then becomes, why does their calendar begin on the 11th of August of 3114 BC? Well, we actually have an answer. In the book of the Jaguar priests, in the Chilambalam book, it says that on that day, or that was the date, that the road of the sky descended to earth, and those 13 creator gods descended from the heavens, or from the celestial realm, to the physical realm. Now, many people are saying or suggesting that this is all just fantasy and our ancestors don't know what they talked about. Well, not only did they know what they talked about, but for example, in Copan, Honduras, we find a representation of that scene established in stone. We have the giant stairway of the celestials, of the gods, with their accoutrements, the wings, the helmets, and everything descending from that stairway to the heavens, and it's all there in stone. So our ancestors not only commemorated this stuff in oral and written traditions that somebody came from the sky, but they also then created monuments as, picture books for the ancestors, or for the people, the heirs afterwards, to see what happened. And today, what are we? We have become blind. We don't even see what's right in front of our eyes.
Gonna be more true. Now, Esteban Cruz from Historias Paranormales is asking you, do you think that the new discoveries, such as the Gudum Padam pyramid, will change history?
Yes, of course. Once that is accepted, then, the sky, not even the sky is the limit, because in my opinion, I think that Gunung Padang is in the same category as, for example, when Göbekli Tepe was discovered. Göbekli Tepe today is accepted that it began or was starting to be built around 12,000 BC. Now, how are we, 10,500 BC. How do we know that this happened? Well, because at the time, so around the early 1990s, Robert Schoch, for example, always said that our history goes way back further than just 6,000 BC. And everybody said, well, you are wrong. This is an impossibility. So it was only people like us who said that our civilizations goes back further than the Sumerians and the Babylonians. And then they discovered Göbekli Tepe, and because in the shape or in the way it was discovered, they were able to determine it is 10,500 from 10,500 BC, because when Göbekli Tepe was built, whoever built it or whoever came after, they then decided to bury it up artificially again, thus creating essentially a time capsule. And so when in the 1990s, then this shepherd came along with his flock of sheep that, where one of his sheep fell into a hole, into this void, and then he looked inside and said, wow, is there a structure down there? And that is when the excavations happened at Göbekli Tepe, and the archaeologists, strata for strata, level for level, uncovered Göbekli Tepe and discovering bones, textiles, ash, trash, all these different things. That is why archaeology today accepts Göbekli Tepe as being ancient, or predating the Babylonians. So, am I speculating that there are other, sites that are underground that are still not uncovered, that are just dormant, undiscovered, that will be discovered? The answer is a resounding yes, and we need to pool together all the resources and all the money to turn on all the satellites up in the sky to help us see inside the ground.
I want you to know that we are showcasing your social media. So if anybody have any question or follow-up questions, or just want to be the ultimate fan and follow Giorgio, you have all the proper information right here, right now, through the whole episode of this particular press event. Okay, and now we're going with the questions. Mariana, next question, please.
Juan Manuel Arias from Infobae, Colombia.
Buenas tardes, Giorgio, a todas las personas que están acá conectadas. Es un placer estar tema apasionante como
Yeah, he seems to have dropped off.
Alienígenas.
It's all this alien interference.
¿Me escuchan ahí?
Ahora sí, habla.
Perdón.
¿Tu pregunta cuál es?
Un tema tan apasionante como los alienígenas ancestrales. Tengo dos preguntas. Soy de Colombia y la primera es, pues viendo la posibilidad de un asteroide que pueda impactar la Tierra el 22 de diciembre de 2032, como es el 2024 YR4. ¿Qué opina Giorgio de que este asteroide pueda impactar precisamente sobre Colombia y Venezuela, porque entra por el ecuador del planeta? Y la segunda, sabemos que es un gran amante de San Agustín en Colombia, en el Huila, de esa cultura milenaria, y la pregunta es, ¿cuáles son sus impresiones? ¿Qué opina usted sobre San Agustín? Y si tiene pensado venir a Colombia para conocerla personalmente, investigarla e investigar otros sitios acá en Colombia.
Yes, so I've heard about the story about the asteroid of 1932. Hopefully that will not happen, and that is a, something that, can be averted. something like in the movie Armageddon, where we send, I think it was people that drill for oil that will go up there. Now, obviously, I'm joking right now, but I hope that the calculations are a bit off, and that it will crash into the water. Maybe that will create some tsunamis. So I'm sure everyone follows this story. Can be done to be prepared. Now, the second question about my favorite things in Colombia. Yes, San Agustin. We've done an episode there with my good friend and colleague David Childress and his friend and our colleague Praveen Mohan, where they compared the similarity between some of the motifs found at San Agustin and also of ancient India, which is incredibly intriguing. But I personally am absolutely enamored with Colombia because for decades now, I have worn this, where is it? This particular, the other way.
Inside, your side, that one, yes, right there.
This way, yeah. I've been wearing this pin right here, and this is actually from Colombia, from a region called Tolima in Quimbaya, and that was a culture around 800 AD where they created thousands of these little gold objects, all in the form of anything that you're familiar with from biology, like fish, birds, mosquitoes, parrots, anything you can imagine. And 17, though, look like modern day planes, because there are also ones that look like actual fish and actual, birds and things like that. But 17, look exactly like that. And so the idea was in the 1990s by two guys that were two engineers, they look like planes, can they fly? So they made models about this size, put a propeller on the inside, they threw it in the air, and it flew. So this to me here, Colombian, is one of my most favorite smoking guns of the ancient astronaut theory. And I think these are depictions of ancient planes that our ancestors saw globally up in the sky.
Perfect. Next question, please.
Freddy Alexis from Cazador de Mitos, Chile.
Hi, Giorgio.
Hi.
Well, my question is, if we assume that ancient context stories are not just about extraterrestrial beings, but rather symbolic or psychic interactions with non-human intelligences, as suggested by researchers like Vallée, to what extent do you think the extraterrestrial hypothesis remains the best explanation for these encounters?
Well, I would argue that extraterrestrial does not necessarily mean flesh and blood. I mean, extraterrestrial is out of this world. And so if it is a non-corporeal, a non-physical entity, then that's still extraterrestrial. I mean, it's still otherworldly. Now, I personally am arguing for the existence of physical extraterrestrials, like physical beings that look essentially like you and I in physical form, that have mastered interstellar space travel, and they're using that in order to spread knowledge and to foster civilization. I mean, that is the basic of what I like to propose. Now, is it possible that these non-corporeal entities or whatever exist? Absolutely. But I do not think, nor do I agree with the notion that our ancestors were communicating with non-physical beings and that it all happened in their heads. The ancient stories talk about physical relations and physical encounters between these so-called gods and our ancestors. And when we talk about gods, it's always very important to note that we're not talking about real gods. We're talking about misinterpreted, advanced people that were space travelers whom our ancestors thought were gods. Gods do not exist.
I appreciate your answer.
Question, please, Mariana. Let's go.
Yes, Cesar Morgan from Brazil.
Hello, Giorgio. Nice to meet you.
Hi.
I'm speaking from Minas Gerais, Brazil. And here we had a lot of UFO cases, famous cases. And I would like to know if you had some interest or curiosity or some case from South America, Brazil, that really intrigued you, that really make you think, well, there's something really strange in this case.
Yeah, the Virginia case is very strange and to this day remains mysterious. But one of my most favorite places, and I've been to Brazil a couple of times, but I haven't had a chance yet to visit this. But it's this Piedra de lo Inga, and it's this stone that's in the middle of nowhere with these amazing hieroglyphs, carved hieroglyphs. And what's so interesting is that many of these hieroglyphs correspond with other cultures. For example, the Hittites of Turkey, for example. I mean, it is almost an identical script. And then you have to wonder, is that all just coincidence, or could there be potentially a connection? And I am, of course, not saying that, yes, 100% there's a connection, but it is a question and it is worth investigating for sure.
Question, Mariana, let's go.
Francisco Arriagada de Empalco, Chile.
Hi, Giorgio. Thanks. It's great to talk again with you.
Hi.
Hola. You have talked about ancient civilization in Peru and Pumapunku in Bolivia, but I'm from Chile, and we're literally next to those countries. There's any evidence of the ancient astronauts civilization here in Chile?
Well, the Atacama Desert is in Chile, right? So the Atacama Desert has this place called, I think it's called El Andrio or something like that. I think I'm mistaken right now, maybe. But there's this place in that high plateau where you have big, gigantic stone plates, platforms, as if there was a giant platform at some point. And it's definitely artificial, but nobody really knows when it was built, how long ago, and by whom. And so, and then of course you have the Atacama Desert Giant that is like a Peruvian Nazca glyph that also looks very strange. So, Chile also, and there's also a few hot spots in Chile in some of in the Cordilleras. There's lots of lights that are being seen shooting in and out of the mountains.
Thank you.
Excellent. Mariana, let's go.
Yes, Danny Phantom from Venezuela, Caracas. Danny?
Next.
¿Audio? Ahora, ¿sí me escuchan? Ahora sí. Hola, Giorgio, buenas tardes desde Caracas, Venezuela. Quiero hacerte dos preguntitas rápidas. ¿Qué opinas sobre la interpretación de textos y artefactos antiguos como posibles evidencias de contacto extraterrestre? ¿Crees que hay alguna que haya destacado? ¿Y cuál ha sido tu descubrimiento o el caso más que te ha impactado en tu perspectiva como los fenómenos ovnis y alienígenas a lo largo de tu carrera?
Right. So the first question is essentially the basis for the ancient astronaut theory and for the work that I do and to show ancient aliens. And the idea is that the ancient astronaut theory tries to prove whether or not ancient peoples were visited by flesh and blood intelligent extraterrestrial visitors. And this is recorded not only in the ancient texts, but it is then also corroborated in cave drawings or in paintings and in carvings, geoglyphs, petroglyphs, and also in figurines and giant monumental constructions. And so here is the interesting thing. It would be one thing if the ancient texts of one culture would speak about, celestial beings coming down from the sky in physical form and imparting knowledge, giving information. And if that were one ancient culture, one could say, okay, interesting, but that's fantasy, it's coincidence, because no other culture around the planet has the same stories. But in fact, it is the other way around, that all around the world, in every ancient culture, the origin stories begin the same. Somebody came out of the black darkness and descended from the sky and imparted knowledge in physical form. Again, so this is something that is in all the ancient texts. Some of these texts, by the way, today have turned into sacred texts. They're holy texts in holy books. Well, why have they become sacred or holy over time? Because they recorded incredibly important events long ago that, from the ancient astronaut perspective, most all of them describe not a divine encounter with God, but rather a technical first contact scenario with visiting extraterrestrials.
Muchas
Thank you,
gracias,
Giorgio.
Giorgio.
Next
Un fuerte
question,
abrazo.
Mariana.
Marcelo
Two
Otelo
more
from
to go.
Estación Nerd, Brazil.
Hi, Giorgio. Nice to see you. It's an honor for me. I want to know, in the movies, aliens always looks like monsters, but to you, they look like us, like humans.
Yes, absolutely. I've always said that, the biggest secret when the extraterrestrials finally will show themselves to us publicly is that when the door or the hatch opens, we will look at ourselves in the mirror. The question should no longer be, what do the extraterrestrials look like? But from the ancient astronaut perspective, the question should be, do we look like the extraterrestrials? And the answer to that is a resounding yes, because according to many of the ancient sacred texts, we were created in their image. So it's rather logical to think that we look like them and not the other way around, or to wonder, so I appreciate, by the way, and I love all those Hollywood sci-fi movies like Alien or Independence Day, how they show E.T. or how they show the aliens. But in my opinion, that's, it's entertainment. It's a conditioning part of disclosure. But at the same time, you see, I think that it won't be as shocking as that, but more, or rather that the shock will be, we're looking at ourselves in the mirror.
And finally, one more question.
Marco Almeida from Ilha do Metal, Brazil.
Hi, Giorgio. Welcome back to Brazil. Thank you for chat with us again. 16 years of total success for your ancient islands. How do you explain this? It's more simple explain this success than ancient aliens. And my really question is, in your opinion, most of all those events that you show in ancient basically are closer to the Ecuador line. Do you think have any theory about this appearance, these mystical places are close in the Equator line?
Well, I think that even aliens prefer the warmth. I mean, I'm joking. But I mean, look, but yeah, I mean, even though that may be a joke, unless they're cold-blooded or whatnot, then they would prefer, I mean, if I were to go to a planet, then I would hang out by the beach and not in the Arctic. This is why this whole idea that there's, or I would go hide somewhere, where it's cold. But I would hang out absolutely in the tropics. So, and they had the choice because they also had flying machines. So No, but and your first question about what do I attribute the success to Ancient Aliens? I have to thank the fans. The fans keep tuning in, and this shows to me that we have struck a chord. And in every season, we bring forth new material, new evidence, and even sometimes new evidence while revisiting older topics, because like you just said, 15 years of shows, which means 15 years of progress scientifically and technologically. So now we can do things that 15 years ago, for example, were not possible. This is why this season, for example, we have one episode called Resurrecting Puma Punku, in which we've commissioned 3 independent CGI 3D recreation artists to recreate Puma Punku. This was not possible 20 years ago. So, and by the way, you have to tune in because they all sort of, well, I can't tell you. So you just have to, you have to tune in. It's amazing.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Of course.
Now we want from you why no one should be missing season 16 of Ancient Aliens in History Channel.
Because season 16 is filled with more material that has never been seen before, and also with material that we've visited before, like I just said, and we are building on top of, like, for example, that Puma Punku episode is something we've always wanted to do, but 10 years ago or 50 ago, the technology with which to accomplish this idea did not exist. So the fact that we were now able to do it, and that we discovered stuff that is mind-boggling, and also the questions abound. I mean, right now we in the new season we have episodes dedicated to what is happening right now with the modern day UAP phenomenon, how there's hearings not just in the US but also in Mexican Congress and things like that. So these are things that did not happen 10 years ago. And so we are right now in disclosure, and Ancient Aliens is your go-to guide how to handle all this whole thing. It'll answer a lot of questions for you if you are new to the topic as well.
Thank you, Giorgio, and we are going to be watching our go-to guide about aliens every week only in History Channel. Recuerden que todos y cada uno de ustedes tienen los mejores episodios con la temporada 16 para que entiendan todo lo que tiene que ver con el tema de aliens, desde Puma Punku hasta por qué la ciudad perdida de los mayas es tan importante para entender la presencia de los alienígenas dentro de nuestra civilización, porque están entre nosotros. Y es muy importante ver cómo han intervenido a lo largo de la historia para enseñarnos con su inteligencia a que podemos vivir mejor o intentar vivir mejor como nuestra civilización. Los aliens están entre nosotros. Gracias a Giorgio podemos conocerlos y entenderlos mejor. Giorgio, muchas gracias. Thank you so much. Y hasta la próxima, amigos. Gracias.
Gracias.
Hola, humanos. Su mundo se está transformando más rápido de lo que su cerebro puede comprender. Pero hay esperanzas. Escuchen a nuestro emisario Giorgio. Él sabe conectar los puntos entre el pasado antiguo y los fenómenos inexplicables del presente. Él tiene la información. Alienígenas ancestrales. Por History Channel.